and welcome to the Marketing Mix. This week I've got a really special guest. I'm really pleased to have her. We've just been having a chat before we came live, and I think this session is going to be very good. So we're going to talk about Google Analytics 4, GA4, which if you haven't seen it, it's a huge step change from the old Google Analytics, and I'm still getting used to it. I have to say it's a really big change. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Amanda and ask her to tell us a little bit about her and her business.
Hello, thanks so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be talking to you all today. Yes, I'm Amanda. I'm based in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, just about an hour outside Dublin. And I've been in business this current business is 14 years old this year. So I have a teenager who can be a bit stroppy sometimes. And when I started business, I just had a Facebook page, and Facebook was my thing. And it was all very new to people back then. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram wasn't even a thing. Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn were really what we were looking at back then. And I started working with businesses, helping them with that. But then I started learning about marketing more, and the more I learned, the more I loved marketing. So I started moving out. And I think I was saying to you before, I've done so many things, but now I am an analytics specialist. So I help people not just with their Google Analytics, but basically all their analytics to make sure you're actually getting some sort of return on investment for all that time and energy that you're spending online.
That's amazing. And I have to say, if you're watching and you've been with me for a while, you'll know that I'm a big advocate of measuring what you do in marketing, because it just means that you understand what's working and what isn't. And in terms of being the solo business owner and being the person that does everything in your business, you want to do more of the things that work, because that makes your life easier and you have to do less. So we're going to get into Google Analytics 4. So Amanda, tell us, what is GA4?
So this is a brand new, absolutely brand spanking new version of Google Analytics. So over the years, Google Analytics has changed, but it's a bit like Facebook. Every now and then Facebook will change its layout, maybe add a few new features, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the same for all the social networks. You remember Instagram just used to be a square photo sharing app. Now it's everything. So that's what Google Analytics would do. It would release an update, and it was basically bolting new things onto the old system. But this is completely new. They built it from the ground up. So when you go there, it may look slightly familiar, and that lowers you into a false sense of security to start with, because like you said, you've been in there a lot of times. But then you'll notice things are very different. And some of that's because of privacy. So things like people are using cookie blockers. We've got GDPR in the UK. They're bringing in a whole lot of GDPR similar systems throughout the world now. So they need to really focus on that. And also it was about time, because it was built in a different age of the internet when we didn't have all the things that we have now. So it is brand new, completely new. And like you said, it takes a little while to get your head around it. But when you do, I do think it's better. I think it's a better system, but it just takes a little while to get there.
Okay. So you've touched on a couple of reasons why it's changing, but is there anything else that you want to share about why Google is changing over to GA4?
I really think the privacy has been a big thing, because there were countries that were looking at blocking the use of Google Analytics betwause there were lots of settings you could switch off to make it more compliant. But I think Italy was banning it because of privacy concerns. So really they knew this was a trend. Also, all people have talked about in 2023 is AI, right? But, AI isn't new. We know that. AI has been around for a long time. And to be able to bridge that gap between the fact that they won't actually know as much about the users that are coming in, there is AI that is able to model. So once it knows a certain amount about the website behavior of the people who visit your website, it's able to model kind of future estimations on what's going to happen on your website. And if it doesn't happen, it alerts you. It says, oh, there's an anomaly here, which is great. Actually, it's actually brilliant, because then you can go and go, oh no, something's broken on my website, and you can go and find out what it is. So that's one of the big changes. And also just the way it's measuring, the way it's measuring is different. So you used to go in, you used to see the number of page views to your website, but now it's all based on something they call events, which is down to, that's what the internet is about now. It's not about someone viewing a page. Somebody could come to your website and view a page and watch a video on that page and scroll through and be on it for 5 minutes and read it, and or listen to a podcast on that page. They could even download something from that page. And old analytics would, if they'd left after doing all of that, old analytics would have said that was a bounce. So you'd have this horribly high bounce rate, 80, 90% sometimes.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean those weren't valuable visitors, because they were doing a whole lot of other stuff. So now that would be, you'd have an event for starting a session, you'd have an event for viewing a page, you've had an event for scrolling, you'd have an event for staying on the page for that long, you'd have an event for watching a video or listening to a podcast. So all of a sudden that becomes a valuable visitor. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so much better. One of the reasons it's designed for how the internet works now.
Wow. But so I actually put it, I actually had the old version and 4 running at the same time, I think since maybe October last year, just to get it going. And then so I run my year as my business year, so it starts in February and ends in January. So now I did that so that I had a full year's worth of stuff in the old version, and now I'm going to have a full year in new. But I had no idea about all the things that you just said. That is news to me. Oh my gosh. So that's one of the differences between the old and the new. Are there any other differences that we should know about?
There's a lot of different language out there, which I think is what's the most confusing thing. Like, that was the thing I found most confusing when I went in there. There's terminology used that, I'm sure if you've dealt with any Google products, they're not really, they don't use plain English very well. If you're trying to read any of the documentation from Google, it's a nightmare. And so initially when you go in, there are some phrases. There is a brand new grouping of content called default channel group. So depending how much you were using analytics before, you're probably familiar that there was a medium, and your medium would have been social, for example, or email. And then there was a source, which was the direct source that the website had come from. So Facebook or LinkedIn, or the name of the website that was referring traffic to you. And then there was campaign, which you could set yourself using UTM tracking, which is probably too complicated to get to today. But the problem with that was actually a lot of people were messing up medium, source and campaign, because they were setting their UTM. So people would maybe put in as a medium my website, and that didn't slot in perfectly to the Google Analytics ecosystem. So what they've done is they've left those. You can still have your medium, your source and your campaign, and you can still use UTM, but they've got this new thing called default channel grouping, which you cannot change. So now, whether you've called it as a medium, my website or Facebook or social, it's all going to fit. I mean, 9 out of 10 times they get it right. It's going to all fit underneath this overarching default channel grouping. Now, you may go, I have no idea what she's talking about. But the good news is you don't need to worry too much. But just to know that you'll see this all over there. You'll see events. You'll see a thing called engagement rate, which is the opposite of bounce rate, essentially. So now you can pretend bounce rate doesn't exist. If you really want to see it, you can add it back in, but just don't. And engagement rate is basically how many people come to your website and trigger more than one event. So you get that's a really good one. Yeah. And then the final thing it's really important to know about is goals, which I think, that was when I first thought, years ago, I set up my first goal in Google Analytics. I thought, right, I'm an expert now. So these were associated with somebody maybe buying something or filling in a contact form or downloading your lead magnet. They're not called goals anymore. They're called conversions. So there's a slightly different setup, but it is, once you know how to do it, it is actually a little bit easier, I would say.
Okay. Amazing. I used to use goals in the old Google universe. And I had no idea that was conversions now. So I'm going to have to go and have a look at mine and see what I've done. So small business owners have to navigate this themselves. You've gone through several metrics. So what are the important ones that we should be monitoring?
Well, the most important thing is when somebody takes an action that you want to on your website. So that is conversions. So the first thing I would look at is once you've got it up on your website, and you are okay until the 1st of July, you can run your Universal or Google Analytics 3 or older analytics. You can still run that alongside Google Analytics 4. I would get that up and running as soon as possible if you don't. So the first thing you want to look at is setting up those conversion events. So what is it you want someone to do when they come to your website? And what are the individual steps towards that as well? Because you would set up a conversion for each of those. So if you've got a lead magnet page, because I know you're into email marketing, if you've got a lead magnet page, you might set one goal that would be a page view of your lead magnet page, so that you know somebody's visited that. And then the other goal could be that they've actually completed the form to download your lead magnet. So that's kind of your 2 stages. And then you can work out the conversion rate between the two. That many people viewed it, how many people actually downloaded it. And if it's not, even if it is high, you'll always want to be tweaking your lead magnet page to try and make it better. So that's one thing I would look at, is setting up, not just one conversion event, the lead magnet download, but the path towards it. Or if you're in e-commerce, the good news is most e-commerce software will gel really well with it, and it will set up all those conversion events automatically for you. So if you've got add to cart, payment, sale, that can all happen within that conversion. And that's your starting point, really, is knowing what you want people to do. I know a lot of businesses just look at, the number of people that visit your website, which is great, and you can work really hard to get more people to visit your website. But actually, if nobody's taking the action you want to, that's kind of wasted. So you want to make sure that you're following the trail along.
Amazing. So you mentioned 1st of July is the deadline. So if people don't do anything before the 1st of July, presumably it's just going to switch over.
It is. It wasn't initially, but I think Google have been surprised at how slow it's been for people to make the switch. Okay. And honestly, I know, because I'm talking to a lot of really accomplished marketers who have been putting it off as well. So, they were surprised by that. And now they are kind of pestering you, saying, we are going to switch you over. Now, I wouldn't wait for them to do that. And the reason is like there's a way of moving things like your goals over to conversions. At the moment, you can do that when you're setting up, but it doesn't always work very well. So the nice thing is, if you're taking control and you're doing it yourself now, you can look and make sure everything clicks into the right place. If you just let them do it, all your old data's disappeared. You've got this brand new system. You've no idea what it does. You've no idea how to set up a conversion from a goal. You don't know whether your old goals were working properly. So you're kind of like just dumped in it. Okay. So even if you're waiting, I would just please just install it on your website now. That would be, it's going to hurt you so much not to do it.
And I think the resistance is the change, isn't it? Because we've been so used to having that old version and being able to find the things that we wanted to find easily, because it becomes a habit of where to look, and it just does take a little bit longer to get round it. But the one thing that I found is really useful is that on the home page, the things that you look at the most frequently are stored on the home page, which means you could just keep going back to the reports that you look at most again and again without having to fish around for them. So for me, that's quite an improvement already. But I would say that, I did the switch myself, and I'm not a massively technical person outside of email marketing. And it was really easy to make the switch. So in as much as we've said that they don't use very easy to understand language, the switching over was actually quite simple. So if you haven't done it, absolutely do it, and make sure that you have kept the information from the old version. So I downloaded everything. I downloaded the things that I was interested in at the end of January this year from the old version, and then like February I'm starting with the new, and we'll only be looking at that going forward. So what you've just mentioned, what the pros are of moving, is being more in control. if people are a bit worried, and it is easy, but if people are a bit worried about doing it themselves, what would you advise?
If you've got a web developer, talk to your web developer. I always think it's, it's even worth, I work with several web developers, and it's not a big job for them to do. But if you feel like, you're a little bit nervous about doing it, talk to them, because, they're probably doing it for a lot of clients right now. In fact, they may have even been in touch with you. So it's a software service I offer, but it's through my web developer. And honestly, it's better for you always to get your web developer to work on your site rather than having multiple people, coming in to do it.
Sure.
I would say, though, take this. I know we're scared of the new thing and nobody likes anything new, but if you haven't been looking at your analytics, take this as an opportunity of starting from scratch, because now you've got your analytics, you can learn the new system and you can start putting processes in place. So I just thought I'd say, don't be scared. Just go, well, this is my opportunity to finally look at my analytics.
And so I think that's a great idea, just because I know lots of small businesses don't look at metrics for anything really. I kind of encourage you to do that for the reasons that we've spoken about. But it just means that if you've not used the old version, you're not trying to get used to something new. It's what it is, and you'll go in with it at that, being completely new to it and not having to figure out how old things translate over. So it's definitely an opportunity to get to grips with all that kind of information that's in there, which Amanda was telling me earlier, and I will share a link to her page that she's put together. But she was telling me earlier that she's actually getting more business now, doing less marketing because she's paying more attention to her analytics. So let that sink in, people. So I managed to get stuff out of Google. I can't remember how I did it, but can you tell us how we can keep data from the old version that we want to keep before the switch happens?
So the easiest way, now when I say easy, this is a little bit technical. It wrecked my head a little bit putting it together. Again, because just Google don't explain really well, but there's a tool they have called BigQuery. Now this is a paid for tool, but when it's paid for, it's cost per like megabyte of information that you use. And it's actually like pennies. It's going to cost you hardly anything, a few pounds to make the switch over. So don't be too worried about it being a paid product. So it's called BigQuery. You can just hook it up to the back end of your analytics and basically transfer the information down through that. And that's in like a database format. So just to have it there as well. It's actually not something I'm looking at a whole lot, because now since I started working on Google Analytics 4, I haven't looked at Universal Analytics, but I've been improving my website every day. So it's not something I've looked at, but I've done the download. Do you know what I mean? I think it's always just good to have it there, that information, if you ever need it in the future.
Okay, and that's BigQuery.
BigQuery, yes.
Okay, cool. And then so any general tips and advice in terms of how people can use, because you've talked about doing less because you've analysed your Google Analytics and perhaps other metrics as well, but what is Google Analytics, what's it going to help you to do better?
I think it's that whole knowing how people are using your website. And it can be quite shocking because, particularly if you don't look, you think, oh, well, there's my website, I'm getting this much traffic. But when you start looking at the pages people are looking at, so we were talking before, I used to do all the marketing. Like literally, I had no sleep, no time off. I was doing all the marketing. I was podcasting. I had a YouTube channel. I was doing a live stream. I had a very successful blog, as in it drove a lot of traffic. I did all the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, all of them. The problem with that was I was doing them the best I possibly could. But unless I focused on one, I was kind of sending everyone off in these different directions. And when I started looking at my analytics, I discovered that the blog posts people were reading, they go to the blog post because they had a search query maybe related to it. But because I was doing such a wide variety of things, there was no incentive for them to take it any further. So they'd read this blog post about how to post to Instagram from the web. It used to be a really popular one I had. but it brought me no value. It brought me no customers at all. I've still got a few that are doing that, and I'm constantly trying to try different lead magnets on those pages to capture those people. But I realized I was spending all this time blogging. 3 times a week, I was writing these really extensive couple of 1,000-word blog posts. And actually, it was driving a lot of traffic that wasn't my customer. So one thing that you can look at in Google Analytics is, hopefully, because they know you, who your ideal customer is. Like, what country do they live in, or a bunch of countries do they live in? What age group are they in? And you can see that sort of information in your Google Analytics and work out, are you actually attracting the right people? And, I love that I'm getting visitors from all over the world, but I don't work in the Philippines. I don't work in China, for example. I don't work in Russia. That was a big problem a while ago. But I was getting all this traffic from those areas. None of them were signing up for my email list. And even if they did, I didn't really want them on there. So I knew that that wasn't relevant traffic. So what I did is I pretty much stopped blogging, and I've started readjusting my strategy, which means I blog occasionally. I still do my live show because I know that every customer that gets in touch with me tells me that they've watched my live show. So I know that even though it might not show up in my analytics, that's something else that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So I was able to stop doing a lot of that. I focused in on using LinkedIn, on email marketing, you'll be glad to know, and on my live show. And that has actually built my brand awareness way more than before. It's driving people to the correct pages. So people are actually looking at my service pages. I noticed a little while ago that one of my service pages was just awful. I'd thrown it together in like 2 minutes. And obviously that wasn't doing me a service. When people went there, it looked like a badly made website. So people weren't moving on or buying from me. And since I've changed that page, I can see that more people are converting. So just kind of analyzing those sections and the way people move through my website and making sure that I'm targeting the right content at the right people has really helped.
Yeah. So interesting you say about the service page, because for service-based industries, it's difficult, isn't it? Like, it's not the same. Like, your website is almost, it's kind of a catalogue of what you do, and a bit like a catalogue of your expertise. It's for product businesses, it's people come on, search for a product, find it, either decide to buy it or not, and that's kind of it. But for service industries, it's like you're establishing your credibility and so many different things before people try and decide to buy from you, and that process takes a long time. So are you finding through analytics, I know you can't see who's coming to your website, but are you finding that there are more repeat visitors, and how is that translating into sales?
So there are some really interesting things. I'm also using a tool which I have to mention because it's my new favorite thing in the world. It's a free tool, you'll be glad to know, called Microsoft Clarity. Okay. So this is a free tool that you've heard of, a lot of tools that will do heat maps and this actually records sessions from users. It hooks up to your Google Analytics and your tag manager. It's all completely anonymized. They say it's GDPR compliant. They're Microsoft, I believe them. So, and that records sessions. So this has been really interesting for me because I can see that people will come onto my website. It's really interesting because I can see them scrolling through and stopping at things like the testimonials on the page.
Yeah.
Which has shown me, I mean, we all know social proof is really important, but it shows me that actually people are stopping there and reading it. That's actually how I discovered my service. I was embarrassed that people were clicking on it. I think if you're ever embarrassed to watch somebody work through your website, that can work. So that's been fabulous. For a service page, then I would make sure. So yes, they're there. They'll go and look at my service page. They'll click through to the individual service pages, and you should have an individual service page for every service you offer. And then they click on about. So I know once they're on about, they're interested. So make sure your about page is prominent and easy for people to find.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a real trend recently. I think maybe it's less important for e-commerce businesses, but for services, it seems to have been a trend recently where people are hiding their about page. But it's so important because that's where people go to find out more about you. And I'll be able to go, oh, well, that's really interesting to see the way they use my site. And then they'll go to the contact us page, or they'll go to one of the services and click through for more information on that. So that's been really interesting. Yes, you can see a certain amount about repeat visitors. You can't see who they are, but Google has kind of separated out what they call users and traffic. So when you want to see how many people are visiting your website, you can see the number of individual users, and you can also see where they've come from initially and where else so they have like a touch point kind of graph. So they came from social originally, or they came from Google search originally, or they came in through social, and then they came direct because of course now they have the link to your website. Mm-hmm. That's really useful to look at, to understand. It's not just, very often you can go, well, somebody visited my website, they came from Facebook and they bought from me, forgetting the fact that 3 times before they'd visited from other sites. This is I feel like I'm rambling because I get very excited about all this stuff. But that's always really interesting. But yes, the main thing is you've got user reports, which tell you when they know that it's the same user, and that depends on a lot of privacy settings from that individual user, but it will tell you how many times they visited your site, what pages they've looked at. Or you can see the traffic report, which is based on a session, which is when somebody comes to your website and looks at maybe 10 or 15 pages or triggers 10 or 15 events.
Gosh, I mean, there's a lot in there, it has to be said. I'm liking this Microsoft Clarity. I'm going to go and have a look.
Oh, it's amazing.
That after we finish, because that just sounds, I feel like my website needs a bit of help in terms of I'm not sure that the customer journey is what it should be. So this might help me.
It totally will. As soon as I started seeing people use my site, like I was getting so embarrassed. I was fixing things that have been on my to-do list for years.
Okay.
Like, because I was like, oh no, people actually do click on that page. How embarrassing.
I think it's going to be a summer holiday job for me, because it generally tends to slow down for me because when everyone's on holiday. So I've already got a course that I want to do. I've bought a course, and I might buy your course actually, which I will share the link for in a minute. But yeah, it's really useful, and it's good to know that that information is out there for you. And just if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of this, like, just take everything a step at a time. Know that. Take Amanda's advice. Don't wait for 1st of July to happen. Switch over to GA4 now, and really just start getting your head around what that is. And if you need more help, Amanda has helpfully shared, I'm going to copy and paste it, a link with me that has got all the different ways she can help you. And it's definitely worth checking out. I was having a little look before we went live. And there is a course on there to help you with Google Analytics 4. That's one that I'm going to check out. I've got, now 2 courses earmarked to do in the summer holidays.
The course is really short as well. I just like to say, don't let that put you off. You should be able to do it in like an hour. Like, it's an hour of viewing time. Brilliant. So obviously you're going to have a bit more time, but don't feel like you're committing to. I know some courses, will take you weeks to finish. Yeah. The idea is this is a quick start to your Google Analytics in user-friendly language rather than using that. And there's a phrase book in there which is free.
Well, yes, definitely check that out, and make sure that you take control of your analytics. So switch over before they switch you over. Just to clarify, or just to reiterate the other tools that Amanda spoke about. So there's BigQuery, to be able to download all your information from Google Analytics. Is that right?
Yeah.
And Microsoft Clarity to help you understand the journey that people take on your website when they visit. So I hope that's helped. If you would like to know more about people that I'm going to interview and other things coming up, as well as a weekly email, member-only events. So tomorrow I'm hosting the Marketing Motivator, which is my quarterly mini mastermind. only available to people who are on my email list. So learn to do marketing in the way that makes you feel comfortable, not in the way that big marketing experts tell you you should be doing. So there's the link to join my list. When you join, you'll get a little present from me. Next week, not next week, because this is every 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time, I will be here with Michelle Collins from Pink Spaghetti. And together, because we are both Small Biz 100 alumni, we're going to be talking about how you can successfully apply to be a Small Business Saturday Small Biz 100. We're both in that group. Applications open on the 1st of June. So in 2 weeks' time, we're going to give you our take on what we did and what we thought made us successful applicants. So please join me then. It just leaves me to say thank you so much to Amanda. This has been an amazing session. I thought I knew Google Analytics, but obviously I don't. I'm not the expert, but you've opened my eyes and given me 2 great tools to look at. So thank you so much for joining me, and everyone else, I will see you in 2 weeks' time with Michelle Collins. Take care. Bye.